Okay, today let's talk about the Factorio 248K mod and nuclear power in this mod, because we're kind of at that point in the run on the ribbon with the tiny grid that makes everything difficult. And yeah, nuclear power seems strong. There's some interesting things to say about the fuel. I quite like it. Normal reactors also still exist in the 248K mod. You can just go and build vanilla nuclear power, that's fine. And we're going to kind of chart the effectiveness of various reactor setups with how many exchanges you would need to well ratio the power you're getting out of that set of reactors. So the 248K reactor, 60 megawatts of output, that's 6 heat exchangers. And then there's like this 90% efficiency thing, not a big deal. We've got neighbourhood bonuses to deal with that. Also, the reactors still use the same steam turbines, same heat exchangers, same heat pipes. There are some slightly different recipes for these things, not a big deal, but yeah, it means all the same nuclear power mechanics, most, as far as I can tell, just behave exactly the same. The reactors are slightly different, reactors are slightly different size. Heat pipe layout is going to have to be slightly different. We're not going to worry about heat pipe and pump layout and fluid throughput here. We're just going to use these as kind of charts of effectiveness, because that's kind of what we're going to talk about. And then, yeah, there's also different types of fuel. You can't use the vanilla fuel with the mod reactors, and you've got to have some other of your own kind of mod fuel to power the mod reactors, which is fine. There's a bunch of other text for this as well, but I think they're all blue level text. I quite like the way the mod handles the fuel, in the sense that, yeah, here's a pretty normal. Well, it's not particularly normal. Here's an editor mode demonstration of the process flow for getting uranium fuel cells in a vanilla game. You have some sulfuric acid, you have some uranium ore, you mine that, you put it in a centrifuge, you get two kinds of uranium out, and you can make some uranium fuel cells. And yeah, you can use the same, in fact it's the same split of different kinds of uranium in the 248K mod as well, but you've also got the thorium option, which I quite like a lot. So new thorium, also boring uranium, combine several of those. It's a different, it's the one we've got at the moment. It's the one we've set up. Thorium we get from processing iron ore with a bunch of other fluid stuff. Rich water is also a thing we care about. We also get a bunch of iron out, and yeah, this means that we don't have to wait for the statistics of cool rocks to turn up, and we can also save all the cool rocks for Covarex. But also, the other thing that I quite like about this mod is, where is it? This recipe? Yeah, this recipe lets us do basically the same setup, but processing copper ore instead of iron ore, and gives us the uranium we need. So we can actually make both parts of, we can make the nuclear fuel without needing to find a uranium patch. And I quite like that as a mod design decision, because when I was in vanilla, when I was having this sort of thing, it ended up being, if I find uranium and I start uranium processing, I have way more fuel than I need, and before that I don't really have any fuel, and there wasn't kind of any intermediate. I either had no fuel or I had a ton of fuel, and then I had Covarex and I really didn't care about it. Whereas the 248K mod has, you can still do that, but you can also, they've also made some of the options, by making the resources more available, because it can be just copper and iron ore if you want, and also by making the process slower, because this only gets one thorium every 16 seconds, there's kind of more intermediate values of not just do I have fuel, yes or no, but intermediates of, am I making enough fuel? Do I need slightly more fuel? Do I have a fuel buffer? All that kind of stuff. So that's quite nice. That's the thing that I like about the mod. There's also reprocessing. This is like the normal reprocessing that you would do for, spent fuel cells, and it does a thing. That's fine. There's also reprocessing the 248K mod, and there's a lot more of it because there's a lot more fuel types in the mod as well. So this is the fuel type of uranium and the other kind of uranium. This is pretty much the closest analogy to the vanilla fuel, and is not the one we're using, because we're going to at least start with the thorium based one instead. And then there's a couple of other fuel types that have other kind of fissile materials in there as well, and you kind of only get these other fissile materials from processing other kinds of nuclear waste. And so this is going to be kind of an interesting game of probably having different reactors powered with different kinds of fuel that all get reprocessed into different things. I think some of these some of these end up with boring uranium, but otherwise you only sometimes you only get uranium-233 if you're reprocessing it is this one, the thorium, so you kind of have different rates of use of different kinds of nuclear power, which is interesting and cool. The reprocessing itself is also a more complicated thing. You've got to get more products, and then there's another recipe which has more fluid things, and it's also statistical and only sometimes works. So the reprocessing is a bigger deal, and then there's also just nuclear waste and stuff like this, which also has its own facilities and is just processed super slowly. So there's an extra complexity hurdle in here, which is appropriate for a mod like this. Let's talk about reactor sizes and ratios and things like that, because this is where 248K seems to be quite strong. And we've got, so this is a normal reactor setup. Put a piece of fuel in each of these, and we've got 100% neighborhood bonus. So each of these reactors is doing the work of one lone reactor. So we've got in total 160 megawatts of power, which is, that's fine. This is kind of the smallest I would think about building in a real game if I had a choice about it, because I like getting some neighborhood bonus. In the 248K mod, the neighborhood bonuses are actually doubled. So each of these reactors, as well as the 60 megawatts of kind of the base value, it's getting 200% neighborhood bonus, which means this pair of reactors is spitting out 360 megawatts, which is pretty fantastic. I mean, you're still going to have to figure out how to heat pipe this and how to pump everything in and how to get the water in and the steam out and all that kind of faff. Reactor costs somewhere, I think over here I had, so 2 reactors will cost you this much stuff. This is pretty fine by the time we're looking at the sorts of things of having rail networks and roboports and stuff like that. The 248K setup has slightly less of the normal stuff and then also mod things, but is also a completely fine amount of resources to be getting 360 megawatts from. I think one of the other interesting comparisons is the mod also has a solar panel, which is 80 kilowatts, and then the normal solar panel is 60 kilowatts, and the mod recipe is... Okay, so you get 2 out, but you need aluminium and concrete and like 20 chips and 10 copper per solar panel, and the basic recipe is just 15 and 5 and then 5 steel. So this tier 2, like the mod based solar, doesn't seem as better as the normal solar is in comparison to how much better the mod nuclear is. That was an awkward phrase, but basically, mod nuclear seems strong. Mod solar seems not great in comparison to how good mod nuclear can be. But let's play with the modifiers, the neighborhood bonuses even further. A 2x2 vanilla reactor setup is a pretty common thing, and you do this, you get neighborhood bonuses from 2 reactors, and so this puts you on a total of 480 megawatts, which is, that's a good reactor. That'll get you a lot of stuff done. If the 2x3 is also pretty common, and then these middle reactors get 3 times the neighborhood bonus, which is pretty much is the most you can get. If you try and get 4 neighborhood bonuses, this middle reactor, you no longer have a place that you can automate fuel in and out. So maybe you're hand feeding it. That sounds terrible. So 3 neighbors is pretty much the most you can get, and the 2x3 gives you 800 megawatts, which is, this is fine. This is also kind of the standard kind of workhorse build I'll do at the point where I'm doing that in a vanilla game. If we look at some of the 248K mods, because their neighborhood bonuses are bigger, these guys have got 400 neighborhood percent bonuses. This thing is pretty wild. The number of exchanges this meets is 120, 1.2 gigawatts of power. And now we're really starting to worry about how we get heat pipes and how we get water in and how we get steam out, because that's going to be an issue. Then if we go to the 2x3 version of the mod reactors, this guy here in the middle, 420 megawatts just by itself, and there's the number of heat exchangers you need to capture all of the heat from this reactor setup is all of these, and we're still going, and I had to remove some of the rail to get them all in. It's 2 and a bit gigawatts for a 2x3 reactor setup, which is pretty fantastic. Like there's like a lot of power coming out of these reactors. Then trying to figure out how to heat pipe and pump all of these things in will be quite an issue. I mean, especially as so boilers are 60 water a second. Offshore pumps are 1,200 water a second. The 20-to-1 ratio between offshore pumps and boilers is pretty well known, but the thing is, heat exchangers use 100 water a second. So you can actually only get 12 heat exchangers from one offshore pump, which means the number of offshore pumps you need to be continuously supplying the 6-reactor thing is like 17. That's a lot of pipe. It's a lot of different pipes, especially given that's water in, and you also have to get steam out, and that is, I don't want to design, I mean, it's not going to fit in my grid. My grid is also just too small. That's one of the weird things about this run. That's just, whatever. But also, I don't even think this is going to be the final phase of power in the mod, because we've got a fusion stage. There's text to research how atomic fusion works somewhere down here. Is it after this one? Yeah. There's the ability to research fusion energy. So we're going to have power grids after this, and 2.1 gigawatts doesn't even sound like it's going to be a big deal on the scale of this mod. So like the arc furnaces that are strong in comparison to vanilla stuff, it doesn't seem that these are particularly overpowered within the scope of the mod. But there is one other thing I like about the 248K mod for nuclear stuff, in that the whole steam tanks thing, which we should probably talk about separately later as well. Like if you are setting up a 2x2 reactor thing for the first time to make all your power grid nice and clean, you've got 480 megawatts. That's cool. If your base isn't using 480 megawatts yet, you could pump all the steam into tanks, and this many tanks, 36 tanks, turns out to be the number of tanks you need to fully capture one uranium fuel cell cycle in a 2x2 reactor in vanilla. And the number of tanks changes with your neighbourhood bonus, not just because you're adding more reactors, but because you're also getting more neighbourhood bonus out of it. The 248K has some other options other than tanks, which I also am kind of abusing in this, in that these silo tanks are huge, and I don't just mean like their footprint on the map. I mean, you can't actually see it there, so let's find... not there. Storage volume, 500,000 units. It turns out that, having done the math for this, the 2x2 248K mod reactor for one cycle of thorium fuel will produce steam that fits in 3 silos. In fact, the third one is barely used. It's mostly the first 2. It's like slightly over 1 million. Part of this is also because the fuel value of thorium is smaller than the fuel value of uranium fuel cells, and I think that's also a thing I like that makes setting up small initial nuclear reactors good in 248K, because it means that when you're doing this kind of pulsing of these reactors, of adding one bit of fuel, waiting for the steam tank to fill up, adding in, running your base off that for a while, adding one more later, the sort of the pulses don't last as long, which means you don't need as much storage. But also these tanks being huge mean you really don't need much storage. And then turns out for the 2x3 reactor with the 2 gigawatts of power, you still only need 4 of these tanks to capture all of the steam from that, from one thorium cycle, which is pretty wild. The other problem you're going to have here, though, is like, not only do you have to figure out how to heat pipe all of this stuff and then get all the water in, if we are just using 4 tanks, then there's like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, the ones are on the other side. We've only got 10 fluid interfaces into these 4 tanks, which means if 10 of them are inputs and 10 of them are outputs, we're still going to have massive fluid throughput problems. And even if we put some more of these things on the outside, it's going to be moving the steam we've got through these tanks at the speed we need to in order to unpack all the power from all of these heat exchangers is still going to be a disaster. So it's not that the mod is just making everything easier, it's making some of the things more powerful, but it's also giving us a couple of extra headaches, which I like. Like I think I can figure out how to fit all of this in a grid reasonably well, but then also managing the fluid throughput and all of that, and part of that is the problem of like me having a grid that's too small. But yeah, it's pretty good. I quite like it. We're going to do steam tank things. We're going to build some nuclear power. Nuclear power seems pretty strong. We've got a bunch of different fuel reprocessing options. It's going to be good.